have one more question, and then we'll be doing the closing. I'm going to ask David to answer this question first. In an average month, 50 women are shot to death by their intimate partners in the United States. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of a woman being killed 5 times. It is important that we keep dangerous and irresponsible people from carrying guns in public and in our communities. The gun lobby's top federal priority, concealed carry reciprocity, is a policy that would force our communities to allow concealed, loaded handguns carried by people from states with low or no permit standards. This includes people who have committed violent crimes and domestic abuse, and people with no firearms training. If you are elected to Congress, can we count on you to be a gun sense leader, putting the safety of our communities above the agenda of the corporate gun lobby?
Count on it. Yeah, I'm proud to say that I will never take a penny from the NRA, and that I look forward to getting my grade of F from them each and every year. We addressed some of these things earlier. I agree with Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan wholeheartedly in that I do not support concealed carry reciprocity. I think that Illinois laws should be Illinois laws, particularly when they're well thought out and designed. I support a number of common sense reforms that I think 80 to 90% of the American public supports, such as mandatory background checks and reducing the number of rounds per magazine. That's the one area in public policy that former Vice President Dick Cheney and I agree on. I'd also like to see, I think many of us are just really fed up with this incident after incident, and I'd like to see the reinstitution of the assault weapons ban that served this country so very well until it was repealed in 2004. I think that people who have been implicated in domestic abuse also should no longer have access to firearms.
So just to address the reciprocity issue, I've said this repeatedly throughout the campaign, the notion that the Republicans in Congress who love to talk about states' rights have suddenly forgotten their interest in states' rights when it comes to reciprocity is, I use this word a lot, but it's ludicrous. A lot of what's happening in Washington right now is ludicrous. So I'm absolutely opposed to what they're trying to push through. And the notion that they're trying to take away, Eleanor was right. To decide what its concealed carry law is abominable. And the fact that they're doing that while we continue to see gun violence go throughout this country on a daily basis. And I know we end up focusing on the school shootings because of course we should, they're tragedies, but we can't forget what's happening in between the school shootings. There are shootings every day in this country. And when it comes to domestic violence, the notion that someone who's been convicted of domestic violence could go buy a gun without a background check, it's also something we have to fix immediately. And we can do that. There is interest in this country to do it. It's not as if the people don't want to get this done. It's because we have members of Congress who are bought and sold by the NRA and the gun lobby that are refusing to do anything about it. And I want to talk a little bit about violence against women too, because that's an issue that we have to continue to confront in this country, and it's something that we are not doing enough on. In the 1990s, Joe Biden led an effort to get a law passed, the Violence Against Women Act. And law made some very important policy provisions that were advancements. It didn't do enough, but one thing that has happened is the Supreme Court, led by Rehnquist and the conservatives, repealed the law that allowed women to go to federal court. And we have to fix that as soon as we can because it allowed more women to have access to the court system to address their issues.
Thank you. When I go out to Washington, the NRA has no interest in me, and I have no interest in the NRA. Do any of you watch Stranger Things? Can anybody get into that series? Okay, so for Stranger Things fans, I think the NRA is like the mind flare. For you gardeners, it's like honeysuckle, where it is pervasive. It goes everywhere, and you have to root it out a little bit at a time. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And we're going to do that in the 13th, and we can do it in the 12th, and we can do it in the 15th. We can root it out, because that's how we get rid of the power of the NRA, is by rooting out the people who are affected by it. And when we talk about protecting the Second Amendment, you know, one thing that people always forget is that it has been held over and over again that it's consistent with the Second Amendment to ban unlawful weapons and ones that are unusual or not regular, not typically used, like an M16 or an AR-15. That's okay, we can do that. It just means we have to have the right representatives in office to make those hard decisions.
So I think we should take the strictest state laws as far as gun reciprocity and make that the law, but I don't really feel safe when everyone has a gun strapped to them like during the times of the Old West. Our country is saturated with guns and drugs, and that's proven to not be such a good combination. Our military guards the opium fields in Afghanistan, and they turn a blind eye to the 400 heroin labs in Tajikistan. We've got a DEA that blocked regulators from doing their job, the result of that was an over-prescribing of opioids. We have unsafe psychotropic drugs that are put on the market knowingly that they cause violence and gun shootings. Yet Donald Trump has cut rehabilitation, and we have over 65,000 drug overdose deaths a year. We need to prosecute the bad players in our CIA, military, and pharmaceutical companies and adopt the same gun regulations as Europe, because in Europe there are like 5 times more gun shootings here in America than in Europe. We need gun training, register and end the private sales of guns.
Illinois was the last state to get concealed carry. We were forced into it by the legal system. Illinois has a great training program for concealed carry. It's 16 hours, 8 hours of laws and 8 hours in the field. So I think that it really, my daughter is getting her concealed carry, although I've taught her well. She's going to know how to handle a weapon and defend herself. The notion, I think the state's right comment down there, I could agree, we're states' rights, the notion that we're going to get people from other states that have no laws jammed down our throats is just really maddening, for lack of a better attitude at this point. I think I'm going to one-up you there, Doctor, on the grade from the NRA, because the first one went on the fire pile and the second one came certified mail, and I had a few words on it as I sent it back to them. So I'm going to trump you on that, so to say.
The intersection of domestic violence and gun violence is utterly clear. This is very serious. We're losing too many people, and the system doesn't protect people, and that's what it's supposed to do. That's why my friend's friend is dead. That's why her daughter and son are without mother, and why her grandson is without a grandma. It's bloody serious. We have to do better. You know, the thing is, repeated violent offenders can get back out on the street by just giving some information about some drugs or something. And that's part of the problem, is that we don't put away violent offenders. You know, instead we're so focused on drugs and other, light crimes, when we should, we criminalize mental illness. Which is, part of the problem too. We have some real issues with guns, and we have a lot of great ideas as Democrats on how to do better with that. But with domestic violence, we have to listen to women and men, and we have to protect them within the system. Well, in my hometown, my first event, a lady said, didn't she have it coming? And that blew me away, that a woman would say that. But that's what we're fighting against.
I favor the restoration of the ban on assault rifles, and I would vote for anything that bans guns that are made for the purposes only of killing people. I'm not interested in taking the hunters' guns away from them, and I do understand as a civil libertarian that the Bill of Rights needs to be defended. But there are ways to amend the Constitution, and that I keep in mind. Once again, I think that the Second Amendment is not the right background for a sensible gun law discussion, and that is what the NRA keeps forcing down our throats, is that somehow any regulation of guns whatsoever is going to be a Second Amendment discussion. I don't think it has to go to that level instantaneously. I absolutely oppose gun reciprocity. I was so proud that Illinois didn't have concealed carry, and now, as was really pointed out, now that we don't have any choice about it unless we act together to undo this mind flayer, what I would say is at the very least, let's take care of Illinois, let's take care of home. And we have a Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that can somehow regulate the movement of cigarettes from Kentucky to Illinois. Surely they can also regulate the movement of assault rifles from, Iowa with no training to Illinois.
So I want to reiterate a major point that's been brought up a couple times, and that is a majority of Americans want common sense gun legislation. A majority, a vast majority. And what we are doing is we are allowing the NRA to control this narrative as if a majority does not. And they do that by funding well politicians in our country on both sides. And here's the thing, we have to look for that trend. We have to be vigilant. Even if it's a Democrat, we need to call them out. If they're taking political loophole contributions from another politician who takes NRA money, we need to call them out, because that's happening. We don't have a gun problem in the United States. We have many. We don't lead the world into domestic violence. We lead the world in domestic violence that ends in death. We don't lead the world in violent crimes. We lead the world in lethal violent crimes. We don't lead the world in gang violence. We lead the world in lethal gang violence. We don't even lead the world in suicide attempts. We lead the world in lethal suicide attempts. And what this tells you is that it's not about us as a society, it's about us allowing guns to be a major part of our society. Thank you.
So I think at the heart of so many of the challenges that we face, whether it's within the context of women's issues or any issue that we're dealing with, is the flood of money into our political system. It has been something that I have believed in from before I was even running for Congress, that it is something that is eating at the heart of our democracy. The unlimited flood of dark money, foreign money, money from places that we are not even sure where it's coming from. It has corrupted our democratic process, and to me, it is the #1 threat that underlies all the challenges that we talked about here tonight. Look, the Second Amendment is part of our Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment. It's there for people who want to be able to protect themselves. I've got my Ford card. It's right next to my state's attorney badge. But there's some measure that law enforcement says is a good idea. I think we should be open to considering that. Something as big as this problem, how do you eat an elephant? You take one bite at a time. And there are laws currently on the books that say if you commit domestic violence, you can't have a gun. That law's already been passed. But it's only for people who may be family relations, not boyfriends. That's a part of domestic violence that we need to be able to fix, and there's bipartisan legislation sitting there right now waiting to be passed. As far as mental health is concerned, obviously we know that's a component of it, and we all agree that people have certain types of mental health conditions, not people we want to stigmatize, but there's certain folks who shouldn't have access to firearms. We all agree with that. There's laws in place there right now. When I became state's attorney, I kept seeing these folks who shouldn't have guns and still have guns, and they were getting them legally. we found hundreds of cases that weren't reported where people were adjudicated mentally ill, or they had some kind of guilty but mentally ill, or not guilty by reason of insanity, and they still got a gun because the system hadn't reported it. Because the technology was not, there was not the political will to make the technology happen. So there's lots of ways for us to make progress. We've made progress on that issue. We closed that loophole in Illinois, and I believe that we can, in good faith, if we work together, we can keep making forward and taking a bite out of it bit by bit by bit.
Mr. Kelly, you speak against the corrupt, massive money in politics, but your recent fundraising shows that you've been very proficient in gaining a lot of it. My opponent likewise is very proficient. He has nearly $1 million in his campaign election fund. I oppose this, and I think that in this 12th district primary, you have a clear option, whether in the Democratic or Republican race, and that's between two people who are largely unfunded and are actively speaking against the establishment, and two people who are very well funded by the establishment. Brendan, you don't even have an issues page on your campaign website. And so this is important. My greatest issue is all of the foreign war that has gone on and on and on. And I think it's really a travesty, the lack of attention this gets. I know that Brendan and David, you've had like 2 debates so far, and I watched one in its entirety. There was not one question or even an answer directed at all of this foreign action and these unconstitutional wars. If you read the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 clearly defines what Congress's job is. One of the big jobs is to manage the currency, but maybe the largest, most serious and important job is to manage and control the state of our military and whether or not we enter conflict or do not enter conflict. It's not for the executive, it's for us. And we do not do our servicemen and women a favor when we ask them to defend every border from Africa to Afghanistan, when we remain silent on these issues, when we remain silent on the fact that our government has been arming terrorists for decades. Since the 80s in Afghanistan, they armed over 12,000 Afghanis and Saudi imports too. Who do you think fought against us in 2001 when we invaded? And that's not it. In Syria, we've been sending weapons to Syria since 2011, clandestinely. In 2012, there was an intelligence report that said that if we go about supporting terrorists in Syria,
Can we please move on? You've used your
Yes.
time.
that it would spur the Islamic State, and they did it anyway.
Well, I've sort of lost the narrative here. I think we were talking about domestic violence, and I think one of the problems with our public discourse is that we are often, we identify an issue or a problem, and then we get caught up in other problems that are important for us to talk about, right? It really does matter what's happening in American foreign policy, and it does matter the way that our government is conducting itself overseas. I think everybody on the stage would agree with that. But it also really matters what's happening in our homes, what's happening to women in our homes, and what's happening to women in homes where there are handguns, which is what I understood the question to be here. And so let me just bring it back to that and say, yes, I would be an advocate for gun sense legislation, and also for preparing our first responders to deal with what can be really volatile situations. The first 48 hours after a domestic incident has been reported are absolutely crucial. And I know that at least in the city of Seattle, they're now training their police officers to ask a question when they've been called to the scene of an incident: is there a gun in the home? And they're getting positive responses, and they're able to temporarily take possession of that weapon and have diffused what could have been some really deadly situations. So that's the sort of thing that I would like to see us doing in Congress. And it is absolutely true what you're talking about. There's some really important things for us to address overseas, but let's keep our eye on the ball in terms of what's happening here. Thanks.
In closing, would each candidate please take 1 minute to tell the attendees why they should vote for them?
Thank you. And just quickly, I want to say thank you to the Southwestern Illinois Democratic Women, to Indivisible, and to IBEW for doing this event again. I know it's not easy. Can we just do a round of applause for that? What was it?
Yeah, Southern Illinois People for Progress.
Oh, sorry. Yes. And Moms Demand Action too. Hopefully my time hasn't started. Look, so here's what I'll say. You know, the question was, why should you vote for me? Someone up here said, when they're talking about Attorney General Sessions, that who's the watchdog watching the watchdog? And what I want to say to you right now is I'm ready to go be that watchdog on day one. I've been doing this work throughout my career. I'm a former Illinois Assistant Attorney General, and I'm a former investigative counsel who worked on the House Oversight Committee and in the Senate. And I held the Bush administration accountable on climate change. I held them accountable on their response to FEMA when they were getting people sick by not responding to the fact that people were getting sick in those trailers. I stood up and fought for financial reforms following the financial crisis, and I did the same work here in Illinois. And we can't forget what's happening in Washington right now. We have our own president calling his Department of Justice part of the deep state. Someone's in charge of the EPA who does not believe in climate change. They're trying to put someone in charge of the EEOC who does not believe in fighting for equal pay and fighting against discrimination. The House is on fire in Washington. We are in desperate need of firefighters, and I have been fighting fighters throughout my career, and I'm ready to go do that job on day one. Send me to this Crassus primary, and I will beat Rodney Davis. Thank you.
I wanted to know who came up with the questions for today. For a group. Well, I wanted to say thank you, because we didn't get to all the questions, but they were diverse. And what I really appreciated about that is that when we're talking about women's issues are all of our issues. It is gun control, it is health care, it is climate change, it is how to diversify the workforce. It's all of those things. What we really need is a woman's perspective. We have 19% of Congress right now represented by women. If we want to change the laws, if we want to change the way that our children are seeing our people in power make decisions, we have to change who's at the decision-making table. And I think it's critical that we have more women sitting at those tables making decisions. Thank you.
I don't know how I stand out. I guess I'm the only candidate who really wants to take on powerful players and actually address the drug trade in this world. I mean, that's not an easy task, but it destroys families. It's destroying my family. As a teacher, I've seen it destroy the families of children, as a social worker as well. We've got to start talking about it. It's got to become politically correct. Two things you look for when you vote, and that is how does a politician finance their campaign? Why aren't we following the money as far as elections? I mean, the pharmaceutical companies have blood on their hands. The same entity that sponsors our corporate media, the same entity that finances our elections. I mean, we have to follow the money. The second thing is, how long has a politician been saying what they're saying? Do you want someone who's going to flip when they get into office? Do you want someone who's pandering to the vote? I would think not. So let's start looking at that.
I'm not really big about talking about myself. I can tell you. Doctor? I know. Yeah, right. So I won't. I'll just say that I don't run from things, and I've spent a good part of my life taking on some pretty serious dudes, and so I'm not afraid to back up my words with action. But I really don't want to say this all day. This election right here It's about women. It's about women and the women's movement, all right? Women have been leading this resistance since 10 November 16, and they're going to continue to lead it. What is the job of men, congressmen, and men? It is to support this movement in any way that the movement wishes to be supported and ask for us to help them. Period, dot, and stop. Supporting the women's movement is not only the right thing to do morally, it is the way we are going to win all these elections. So let's get on board and let's go win these elections.
I'm Kevin Gaither. I've been fighting for your vote to earn that opportunity to serve the 15th district. Since I was in high school, I've been fighting for people. I fought to pass a referendum to get a new elementary school. We succeeded. I went to one of the most conservative colleges in the Midwest, Rose-Hulman, and I fought for diverse populations to have a voice. I went to Indianapolis. I fought in inner city neighborhoods for children, for their families, and I also fought the State Department of Health to protect and strengthen health care for the most vulnerable citizens in Indiana. I came back to home, and you know, when I stood up for women. I saw all of these men just watching women being taken advantage of, and one of my friends ended up being murdered. And because of all the things that I saw, that's why every single person said, it's like, you have to talk to me, to the investigator, and that's why I testified in the trial. You know, and this is what I've been taking all across the 33 counties of the 15th district, you know, because I care, I have the experience to get things done, and you know what? We are all here for the same reason, because we want to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Mr. Gaither is entirely right about that. I'm sure that everybody up here wants to make a difference. I'm one of them. I've been an activist my entire adult life, largely in environmental things when I was young and was a good sort of trees. But as a union activist for the last 20 years, in particular, I'm a member of the IEA at a very troubled campus called Harvard, and was one of those who negotiated the contracts for the Faculty Association and also helped to lead them out on strike in 2011. I'm probably the only person up here who's been on strike. I'm glad to say that that was successful. In terms of what's going to happen subsequent to this evening, I'm unopposed in the primary. But in November, we'll probably be looking at a very different world, unless I miss my guess. I'm very much hoping that the women's movement has taken hold and has taken hold of the popular imagination to such a degree that the most hopeful versions of what I have heard up here tonight and the changing of the culture in Washington is on the horizon. So, oh, and Casa Maria at 7 o'clock tonight in Belleville on the High Street. You're all invited.
Folks, it's time for humanity in politics. It's time for us to start being held accountable to you and by you, rather than money and the monopolies that play the highest bidders. And one of the reasons why our campaign is special, especially in this district, is that we've made a pact. We've made a commitment to you not to take any back, special interest, corporate loophole money, political loophole money. And this is important, because if you want health care, if you want common sense gun legislation, if you want these human changes, we can no longer have politicians that are held and beholden to other sources, to other powers that are their donors and not their donors. And that's really why our campaign is so important to this movement, and this is why I'm asking for your support, because you will know that I'm beholden to you, and only you, and nobody else.
Thank you everybody who helped organize this. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how it is supposed to look. Where people are engaged, people are involved. I will tell you, I've never seen anything like this. I think most folks up here, I don't know, Dr. Kelly, you've run before. I don't think you've ever seen anything like this before, where people are this engaged, and it is in large part because of women. And I appreciate that, and I thank you for that very much. Now, this district This district is a place where we will learn the lesson perhaps more than anywhere, perhaps other districts in Illinois. But just because we're right doesn't mean we're going to win. We were right in 16. We were on the right side, and we lost. We have to outwork them. We have to out-hustle them. We have to make sure that everybody is engaged, because the fate of the nation is going to be decided in this particular election. And it is not easy to say, but this district was won by Donald Trump, but it was also won by Tammy Duckworth, overwhelmingly. And we have to listen to that and hear that loud and clear and understand what people are saying. It is not left versus right. It is up versus down. It is blue-collar, middle-class, working poor folks, particularly in Southern Illinois, that are angry at the top and they're tired of consolidation of power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. And that is the message that will win. And we will do it by outworking them, by building coalitions, by taking help wherever we can get it from. And we win, our side wins, when we unite people. They win when they divide people. That's their key to success. So let's move forward, united, not divided, and we will make sure that we beat Mike Boss, and we'll make sure we bend the country back towards something that resembles a constitutional democracy.
I'd like to give a nod to the woman to my far left who has spoken against the horrors of the pharmaceutical industry. There was recently a bill, well, the DEA was investigating the largest government contractor that provides pharmaceutical goods, McKesson, and the Congress basically railroaded that investigation. It was going to be a massive criminal thing. They were going to put people in jail and fine them $1 billion. And it was all railroaded by a bill that passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate. So you should vote for me because I'm beholden to neither of the two major parties. You should also vote for me because I truly value the Constitution, and I will keep my eye on that ball. When a legislator takes office, he makes an oath to uphold the Constitution. And the end of the Bill of Rights, which was passed pretty closely after the Constitution, because the founders saw that people were going to take away rights, they say the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage of others restrained by the people. And also the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So we have our rights regardless what anyone says, regardless what people want to say we're allowed to do. Keep your rights, demand them, and thank you all for being here. God bless you all. God bless America.
Voters should vote for me in the 13th district because I'm the only ballet dancing, marathon running religion professor veteran on the ballot. I dance ballet because my daughters dance ballet, and I realized very early that if I was going to spend quality time with them, I needed to put on the shoes. I run marathons. What does that tell you about me? It tells you that I'm disciplined, I am determined, and I have a tolerance for pain, and we need those things in Washington right now. I'm a religion professor. Look at me, look me in the eye and tell me that religion doesn't matter in domestic politics or in foreign policy. We need more people who know more about religion in Washington, not fewer. And I'm a veteran, which tells you that I have an ethic of service. I was recently endorsed by a group called With Honor, which has committed itself to bringing more veterans into Congress on the idea that the shared bipartisan experience of military service is a good way to rebuild bipartisanship in Washington as well, and I will commit myself to that goal. Thank you.
I need your support on March 20th because we must establish a new House Democratic majority, and Illinois 13 can be a part of that. My opponents would need to make up 18 to 20 points. That's what Rodney Davis has won by the last couple of times. I'm the only candidate in this primary who's demonstrated the ability to secure the tens of thousands of swing votes needed to win with a D after my name in this race. I ran once before back in 2012, and Rodney Davis had the good fortune that year of having a liberal independent on the ballot as well. My message won by 7 points. My message delivered by me, but I had a liberal independent who also stressed climate change and campaign finance reform and single payer and a woman's right to choose and gay marriage And so the voters unfortunately lost out and we got stuck with Rodney Davis. He needs to go because we need a Congress that will stand up against a bigot in the White House who stands against freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom of religion. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, candidates and attendees, for participating in the forum. We also want to announce that through your generous donations, we have raised $340 for the IBEW for opening their doors to us. We would like to make the presentation now, and then we will close the forum.